You're watching This Week in Louisiana Politics with Fred Childers.
Good morning, I'm Fred Childers. Hope you're having a great weekend. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. State lawmakers spent the entire week debating maps in the redistricting session. The GOP largely coming out on top as the session wrapped up just before deadline. Most of these maps largely unchanged from the previous decade. Republicans passed their version of the maps for the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Public Service Commission. Neither create a new majority-minority district, like they had talked about. The House and Senate maps have also passed, some conservatives voting against the Senate map because of how their parishes were cut up. As we've talked about all session, the question about lawsuits is not if, but when. Some believe the legality of keeping only one minority district in Congress should be decided by the courts later. Others want to address it now.
History is repeating itself, that we are absolutely content with allowing the courts to make the decision and ultimately make us do what we can do, what's been demonstrated mathematically, agnostically, what can be done.
And as of Friday, lawmakers haven't approved any state Supreme Court maps or the congressional maps. Also at the Capitol this week, the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget heard from the Department of Corrections. Now, they talked about their move to ship inmates from Angola to Allen Correctional Center and their need for $2.5 million to make that happen. They'll move about 600 inmates to the Allen Parish location. They're hoping this will help fill vacant jobs at Angola. Some inmates will be swapped out at different facilities since high security inmates can't be handled as well at Allen.
A good bit of the ones that we're going to be moving out of Angola are not going to be able to go directly to Allen. We are going to have to backfill other vacancies in other prisons and then pull that offender into Allen.
Some legislators brought up concerns of moving inmates far away, and the department claimed they would take into account where the inmate's family is located when selecting who will move. Governor John Bel Edwards is extending the public health emergency order for a few more weeks. Our Anam Siddiqui listened to the governor at the Capitol and brings us the story.
Good news from Governor John Bel Edwards. Louisiana is finally coming off the Omicron surge. While he says this is great, COVID still remains a threat throughout the state.
I stand before you very relieved today.
Governor Edwards happy to share the state is at the end of the Omicron surge.
The tests that we're reporting today, right around 8% of those were positive. There was a time in January, right around January 22nd, when 35% of our tests were positive.
COVID-19 still remains a threat at our local hospitals. As of Monday, hospitalization rates remain about 4 times what they were before Omicron surge started.
We have the same number of patients in the hospital that we saw during the first and second surges.
Ochsner Baton Rouge Regional Director Dr. Aldo Russo is concerned with the amount of unvaccinated people hospitalized.
Should we be concerned of the gathering during Mardi Gras? Absolutely. But I'm more concerned about the people who are not vaccinated.
Things are improving. That's the bottom line. We do have a ways to go.
That was Anam Siddiqui reporting. Some congressional leaders say more needs to be done to address the rise in violent crime across Louisiana and the nation. Senator Bill Cassidy believes part of the problem is not holding criminals accountable. Violent crime has risen in New Orleans, and Cassidy says it's becoming a major issue. More people are being released for violent crimes, specifically for gun violence. Now, I asked Senator Cassidy about solutions. He says they're on the way. Listen.
It'll be increased funding for police officers. It'll be a better ability to track the tools that criminals use to perpetrate their crimes. It's to go after, believe it or not, criminals now use drones in crime.
Cassidy says the uptick in violent crime is not only affecting our state, but the country in general. Here in Baton Rouge, the city is coming off a record-breaking year for homicides. The St. Helena Parish police jury president facing charges after allegedly trying to bribe someone over an emergency disaster relief contract. The Attorney General's office says this happened in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. They arrested Frank Johnson on Monday. Johnson was elected to his seat on the police jury back in 2020. He was booked into the St. Helena Parish jail. A Louisiana man is free after spending 44 years in prison for a crime he says he didn't commit. Vincent Simmons served more than 4 decades out of his 100-year sentence in Angola State Prison for the attempted aggravated rape of 14-year-old twins back in 1977. A judge says Simmons didn't receive a fair trial because jurors didn't hear about some of the evidence in his favor. That evidence included medical records from the girls that show no signs of assault.
This is the first time he's ever received justice, and I think Judge Bennett said it on the record. And God used Judge Bennett to cut him loose. For 28 years, his petitions were being denied. The 16 other years that he was in there, that evidence was being withheld from him.
Simmons' 70th birthday is this week. Jack Crozet Watson was a Louisiana Supreme Court justice from 1979 through 1996. He has died at the age of 93. An online obituary says he died February 11th. Johnson Funeral Home of Lake Charles says his service is private and it cannot give the date or say whether it has taken place. Watson's Supreme Court biography says he graduated from Louisiana State University's law school after Air Force service in the Philippines, Japan, and Korea during the Korean War. He is survived by his wife, Sue Watson, whom he met in law school, and by one of their 2 sons, 3 grandchildren, and one of Watson's 2 brothers. In North Louisiana, some Caddo Parish students will see an increase in their school calendar this year, and they have the pandemic to thank for it. This is happening in Shreveport. Elementary and middle school students could see an extra 5 days added to their 2022-2023 academic school year.
We all know the impact that COVID-19 has had on all of society, certainly not just schools, but one of the main concerns we have is the amount of lost learning that our students have been impacted with due to not only just the distractions of COVID, but also just the large number of absenteeism from staff as well as students. And so that's why we're requesting our board to consider 5 additional days beginning August 3rd next year for all elementary and middle school students.
School officials say the added days are needed for the kids and will give teachers the time to complete beginning of the year diagnostics and student learning targets, as well as give students time to learn foundational skills. 1 year ago, the February freeze hit the city of Shreveport, leaving residents without water for a week and city employees without a place to properly operate during the freezing conditions. Now, Shreveport is buying a new building for the Water and Sewage Department. Director William Daniels says this new building will solve those problems by housing water and sewage employees plus public works all in one place, while also housing a command center for emergency operations and training.
One of the major problems that we had with the February freeze was the inability for all of us to assemble, and we'll be able to make better decisions and better help the citizens of Shreveport through future natural disasters.
The city purchased it for $9.5 million. They plan to move in by the end of this year. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're watching This Week in Louisiana Politics with Fred Childers.
Welcome back. Ascension Parish is getting another massive clean energy investment. Origin Materials now promising to build a $750 million plant in Geismar. It's a one-of-a-kind project, one that uses wood residue from Louisiana's timber mills and is designed to reduce carbon emissions. State officials also say it will create over 1,000 jobs in the area. The Ascension Parish president says this will draw in skilled workers in the area.
With the process of having cheap natural gas as well as the Mississippi River, rail, interstate close by, it's just a great place to start a business like this in the United States right here in Ascension Parish.
The company expects construction to begin in mid-2023 and for the plant to be operational by mid-2025. Major news for West Baton Rouge Parish. Construction to replace the decades-old Intracoastal Bridge is set to begin this spring. The State Department of Transportation and Development says drivers can expect to see work along LA1 in early April. The southbound bridge is expected to be done by early 2023, while the northbound span should be completed by 2026. The Gulf Coast has become the latest flashpoint in a clash between Amtrak and freight train operators that share those rails. The two sides were back to court for a two-day public hearing over the possibility of restarting a state-supported passenger rail route between Mobile and New Orleans. The train would make 4 stops in coastal Mississippi. Freight operators CSX and Norfolk Southern, along with the Alabama State Port Authority, opposed those plans. The statewide Litter Abatement and Beautification Task Force has met to assess Louisiana's litter problem. Ariel Salk has details on why this is such an urgent matter now.
Every year, Louisiana spends $40 million picking up litter like this. It comes from falling off trucks, parades, or just general carelessness. So the Louisiana Litter Abatement and Beautification Task Force is working to clean up Louisiana. Louisiana is ranked 8th most littered state in the U.S., according to Keep Louisiana Beautiful. Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungasser's office is taking the lead on the task force. The pandemic has only added to the problem. Over 200 million pieces of PPE litters the country, according to recent studies. Susan Russell from Keep Louisiana Clean says this litter could eventually end up in our waterways.
80% of litter and debris in the waterways starts on land. So when we think long-term of how that has the potential to damage our seafood industry, that could be catastrophic for our state.
In July, the task force will submit a completed report stating the problem areas and their suggestions for solutions.
That was Ariel Salk reporting. It's Black History Month, and coming up, we'll take a look at how historically black colleges came about and the future of HBCUs in Louisiana. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Honoring Black history. We talk about the past, present, and future of historically black colleges and universities. HBCUs were created out of necessity. Laws prevented black people from getting an education, so they created their own. Our Tavarius Haywood spoke with Dillard President Dr. Walter Kimbrough and Southern University students about how the future is shaping up for HBCUs.
The HBCU experience is like none other. The culture, the lifestyle, and of course you can't talk HBCUs without talking sports. And of course, the marching band.
Black culture is popular culture now.
But Dillard University President Walter Kimbrough says these institutions are much more than that.
Why are HBCUs so important to the Black community?
Well, from a historical perspective, I've heard really good explanation is that when you started to see the advent of HBCUs, the illiteracy rate in Black communities dropped precipitously. So the first thing that they did was they became avenues for this newly freed people to be educated, basic education.
Kimbrough says HBCUs gave Black folks basic training and the proper education to set themselves up for success. Kimbrough says HBCUs also helped Black people enter into a middle-class lifestyle.
Do you think there's still a need for HBCUs?
Yeah, so I always tell people the goal should be, how do we have institutions that are the best fit for students? Because the overall goal is, how do we get more of our citizens educated? And there are a range of, we have public and private, we have church related, we have, the Mormon related institutions and Catholic institutions. And I mean, there are just lots of different ways. So this is just another way that you can be educated. And I think sometimes people just bristle because when you see Black, but this has been a part of Black communities, just like nobody says, do we need the Black church? I mean, this is a pillar institution like the Black church.
Jazz, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Whitney Thomas and Chris Hunter are both broadcast journalism majors at the Southern University.
Why did y'all decide first to go to an HBCU?
You want to go first or me?
Well, for me, it was more of like the culture aspect, being around the culture, I wanted to feel secure in the environment that I was going to spend the next 4 years in.
After experiencing racism at a previously predominantly white university, Thomas says making the move was a necessity.
I had been pursuing broadcast journalism since my junior year of high school, so I went in kind of with an initiative knowing what I wanted to do. And the opportunity was a little rigorous, with people of color pursuing that field particularly.
Talk a little bit about what it means to attend an HBCU right now.
So I think we provide that opportunity for people just to focus on being a student and not have to deal with that other stuff. It's not to say you can run from it, because you're still in these broader communities where racism can still follow you, as the bomb threats is reminding everybody right now.
Underfunding and attendance have been an issue for many Black institutions for years.
That's always a challenge. If you had more resources, you could do a lot more for the institutions and the students.
While Kimbrough says HBCUs have always made it work with less, he says it's time for more people like Mackenzie Scott, who gave millions to HBCUs, to invest in the future.
You start giving that money to places that educate students that look like what America is becoming. That's how you do that.
HBCUs, of course, are on the rebound. People from all cultures now want to take part in the cultural experience of HBCUs. That's partially due to more and more people speaking up for what they believe in. Both students and Kimbrough agree if Black universities act now, HBCUs could be around for another 200 years.
What do you think the future of HBCUs look like, or what would you all like to see for the future of HBCUs?
Just more attention. I want to see people bring more attention to HBCUs. I feel like now where we are in this world, a lot of people are choosing HBCUs. A lot of people want to come and spend 4 years around people that look like themselves and people who they can relate to. In 4 years, I definitely see HBCUs continuing to grow and become better. I just feel like, we just need to continue to do the work now so that we can improve in those later years.
I gotta agree too. I think as long as we continue to put in the work and actually execute the problems that are at hand right now, we'll be fine in the future. It'll grow. We'll continue to have diverse people coming to the university.
Is the future bright for HBCUs?
It possibly could be, but once again, the challenges will be resources for families and the institutions. We've got to figure out, between government and philanthropy, we've got to start thinking about, how do we help out people? The hard question is people who are white to say, I'm going to do something intentional to help people who do not look like me.
That was Tavarius Haywood reporting. Now, you might remember the latest fight over funding these HBCUs. Just last year, President Joe Biden proposed spending $45 billion. Lawmakers cut that down to $2 billion. In fact, we had Representative Troy Carter, a Democrat from New Orleans, on this show back in October, and we asked him about that decrease in funding. Here's what he had to say.
From my perspective, I'd love it to be the larger number, but I'm realistic that in order to compromise and get it done, we may have to settle for something a little less than what would be perfect in the hearts and minds of many.
Now, Carter says he was a proud graduate of an HBCU. He attended and taught at Xavier University. Up next, we'll have a look at the week ahead on your local election headquarters. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Looking ahead to the coming week, Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development Secretary Sean Wilson will speak to the Press Club of Baton Rouge. Tomorrow, he'll go over the I-110 widening project and the work on the College Drive exit. Tuesday, the State Bond Commission will meet at 10 a.m., and some lawmakers will be back at the Capitol Wednesday for the Voting System Commission. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you next Sunday right here on your local election headquarters.